Good evening. I'm Congressman Glenn Ivey. Want to thank you all for participating on this call. Sorry about us getting started a little late, but we will get moving immediately, and we want to make sure we have a chance to answer as many questions as possible. I want to thank Congressman Steny Hoyer for joining us. He'll speak in a moment. Council Chair Jolene Ivey will speak as well, and then we'll get to our experts. We've got Civil Service Strong Executive Director Rob Shriver, and I think Ottis Johnson of AFGE will be joining us shortly. We know that this is a challenging time for everyone, and these are really difficult situations. We'll go through some of the issues that you're facing with respect to the so-called buyout, which I think we're encouraging you not to take. Some of the issues about some of the cases, again, dealing with Schedule F or Schedule PC as it's also called. We'll talk about some of the cases that have gone forward where injunctions have been granted, which I think is extremely helpful. We want to try and answer as many of your questions as we can. So I'll stop there, and I want to introduce Congressman Steny Hoyer, the former majority leader in the House of Representatives and also a representative of part of Prince George's County in Southern Maryland. Steny?
Glenn, thank you very, very much. You know, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I've never seen in my 44 years in Congress, and that, for that matter, my 12 years in the state Senate, such a ruthless assault against the men and women who make our state government or our federal government function for the people. I want to clarify, however, something right now. No one disputes that we ought to have the most efficient, effective government possible. You have to achieve that efficiency, however, in a rational way. You have to consult and cooperate with Congress, with the civil servants, with the leaders who have been in these agencies, not because you're going to take their word, but because they have expertise and experience that will help you do what you want to do. You have to assess the impact that institutional changes will have not only on the federal workers, but most of all on Americans across the country. You have to abide by the merit-based nature of our civil service. Merit-based nature of our civil service to ensure our government isn't run by political hacks and those who would put their own interest above those of the nation and the American people. That's why the civil service was established. That's why it's been such an important factor in making us have an honest and effective civil service. We've seen the opposite, however, unfortunately, these past 17 days. Elon Musk, not elected by anybody, not experienced in government agencies other than through his own contracts with them, has given a gang of 22-year-old, 25-year-olds max, and others, Doge hackers, access to your sensitive data from your address to your social security number. That's not right. They're giving you just days to decide whether you leave your jobs and upend your lives and that of your families, all while giving you minimal and frankly often conflicting information. It's not even clear that they can legally make that offer or that they actually planned to honor it. It is, after all, the Congress that appropriates money. And by the way, as I think many of you know, past March 14th, the government is not funded for anything. And so we have to get that done first, rather than addressing, as we are tonight, this turmoil. The actions Trump and Musk have taken to vilify and terrorize our federal workers are illegal. They're incoherent. They are demeaning, and they ignore the very negative consequences for our nation. Nobody who runs any business would treat their employees this way because they'd be out of business. They'd be bankrupt. It's all a part of the same strategy to create chaos, fear, and crisis. The Trump administration wants to demoralize and overwhelm us. They'll do neither. Well, actually, they may have demoralized us, but they're certainly not going to overwhelm us. Trump's nominee for director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vought, said about a year ago, and I want you to listen to these words, "We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. What employer, what person who would want to motivate employees for high performance and conscientious work would say that to their people? He went on to say, we want their funding to be shut down. We want to put them in trauma. As a matter of fact, just a couple of days after, they gave 2 million, give or take, employees the right to just walk out the door without considering the consequences to the people, to America, to our national security, to our domestic security. Here in Maryland, we know that our federal workers are not villains. They're patriotic, hardworking Americans. We know that when you put them in trauma, you put the American people they serve in danger. Many of you have reached out to my office the past few days, and I am always moved by your courage and saddened by your stories. I've heard from people who work at the FBI, USAID, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Forest Service, and so many other vital services to the American people. They're understandably concerned. You're understandably concerned about what losing your jobs would mean for you personally and for anyone else. Some tell us they won't be able to afford, excuse me, my machine just flew in here. Okay. Some tell us they won't be able to afford their mortgages. That's understandable. Others say they'll have to take their kids out of college. That's understandable. Many worry their retirement benefits will be at risk. That is understandable. But apparently, Mr. Musk and Mr. Trump didn't care about that. They didn't take time to consider it. They didn't give time for the federal employees to consider it. They gave them a deadline of February 6th, today. Now, a court today has extended that and going to have a hearing on Monday. That's good news. What is extraordinary is that virtually all the federal employees I talked to also emphasized their concern about losing their jobs, of course, but what it would mean to the people they serve. They continue to stand up for the American people and the Constitution. And that's why we will always stand up for our constituents and for the American workers. We're eager to hear from you tonight. Thank you very much. I'm glad that Ottis Johnson, I hope he's here by now and got connected, of the American Federation of Government Employees, as well as my good friend Rob Shriver from Democracy Forward, who was the former OPM director, probably knows as much about this issue as anybody. We're glad to have him on to help answer your questions. We're going to do everything we can to help our community get through this and fight back and succeed. We're going to make sure that America knows that the real villains are not our federal workers, but rather the leaders who demonize them. Now I'll hand things over to the president of the county council in Prince George's County, who represents a lot of federal employees, obviously, Jolene Ivey. Jolene?
Thank you so much, Congressman. My office has been receiving emails, and I've been approached in the community about the fears and concerns of our neighbors who are being affected by the executive orders that are coming from the White House. I believe that Congressman Hoyer summed that up nicely when he talked about their concern not just about their own well-being, but the well-being of the people who they serve. Prince George's County is home to tens of thousands of federal workers, not to mention contractors and consultants who work with the federal agencies. These executive orders are affecting our neighbors directly, and the county must stay informed and be prepared to do what is possible on our end to be a resource for our residents. The trickle-down effects will impact every single one of us. And as you've heard, tonight you're going to be provided resources from AFGE and Democracy Forward. And we've already heard from both our congressmen who have actively been advocating for you on Capitol Hill. These resources will be compiled and they will be sent out through the newsletter. If you could hit *6, then you can be signed up to receive the newsletter. Typically, at times of crisis like this, the county would be working towards funding temporary relief efforts to provide assistance to our residents. But this is not the time for our budget for that either. So we're trying to figure out what we can do, and that is why we're having this meeting tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, I
Mr.
will.
Yes, Rob Shriver, I believe, is next from Democracy Forward.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. It's so nice to be here. Thank you, Congressman Ivey, for inviting me to be here. Thank you, Congressman Hoyer, for your 44 years of service. Council Chair Ivey, thank all of you for speaking up today for federal employees because they sure need it. I'm Rob Shriver. I am with Democracy Forward, and I lead an initiative there called Civil Service Strong. As Congressman Hoyer mentioned, I'm the outgoing acting director of the Office of Personnel Management. I spent my last 4 years at OPM trying to bring talent into the federal government, trying to make the employee experience a better one, because we know that we need talent and we need a good employee experience to make sure the government is at its best and the customers get their best services. So I am heartbroken to see what is happening to our federal workers across the country, specifically to what has been happening at OPM. Let me take a minute just to characterize that. The Trump administration ran on a platform that they said was not Project 2025, but it's clear that it was. They told us in Project 2025 that this is what they were going to do. They are now implementing it, and they're implementing it aggressively. And I am proud to be part of Democracy Forward, who is ready for this and is taking the administration to court to hold them accountable to follow the law. What's clear is there is a strategy to drive out of government as many career expert civil servants as possible, to block agencies from backfilling those positions through a hiring freeze, and then to allow for a surge of unqualified, unvetted political appointees to come in across the government. This is bad not only for federal workers, but it's bad for the country. When we go to a grocery store and purchase hamburger meat, we want to make sure that meat has been inspected by somebody who knows what they're doing rather than based on somebody who was hired who they voted for. When we submit an application for a small business loan, we want that application to be considered based on its merits rather than any political contribution made. And when we feed for our lives, homes because of wildland fires, we want to make sure that crucial federal resources are deployed based on the science, the weather, the data, and the need, not on the political leanings or neighborhood. And that's what career each and every day. Let me talk a little bit about the efforts that Democracy Forward has undertaken. First, representing over 800,000 employees through their unions, we filed a lawsuit about the resignation offer. We filed the lawsuit, temporary restraining order, argued it in court today, and we got the deadline extended. This is important because the information about the fork in the road offer has been dribbling out bit by bit, been overwhelming for these to try to ascertain whether the deal, what their options are, and whether they get. I share skepticism that has already been expressed about the validity of that deal. I am highly concerned that national security personnel are now being considered part of that offer. There is no plan that the administration has put forward to demonstrate how the federal government will protect us and deliver on other services if people take this deal. So we got the court to extend the deadline until there is a fuller hearing on Monday, and we're hopeful that it will compel OPM to put more information forward that federal employees need to know in order to make this very challenging decision. Also, earlier this week, we filed a lawsuit and a temporary restraining order to stop DOGE from going into the Department of Labor and accessing the most sensitive data that exists there. Again, the court agreed and stopped DOGE from doing that. They were kept the Department of Labor. Democracy Forward has also filed 2 separate lawsuits on Schedule F. Those lawsuits have been filed, including on behalf of working people who are subject to perhaps having their due process rights eliminated and being made at will, where they'll have no protections against being judged based on their political loyalty rather than their merits. And there are many more lawsuits and will continue to file, but we can't just through litigation. We need to win public opinion and help everybody in the country understand what we all understand, which is the value, the hard work civil servants bring every day. We have launched civilservants.org. It's a organization. It's made up of partners provide resources to employees, help you understand your rights, to understand the issuances coming from OPM, and how you file an appeal. All of this things on civilservants.org. That we will continue with important information for you. Thank you again for having the opportunity to speak to you all, and I'd be happy to help with any questions at the end. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. You're breaking up a little bit in there, so if you got a better spot in your house there, if you could move to it, that would be good. I'm going to turn this over to Luis Murillo, who's in my office. He'll be sharing the questions. We're getting a lot of questions coming in. I think we have over 14,000 people participating so far. We appreciate your involvement in this, and we're going to try and get to the questions now. We'll give Rob a second to try and get to a spot. We're also trying to bring in Mr. Johnson from AFGE. He's the National Vice President. Hopefully he can join us shortly. So Luis, if you'd be willing to take over now and start reading off some of the questions. I believe Mr. Shriver can address some of those, and Jolene, Steny, and I can deal with some as well. But for the technical ones, I think we're going to have to make sure that Rob gets a chance to hear those. And before we get started on that, just one caveat. Some of these questions are going to be fairly detailed, I'm sure. I know you've got a lot of questions that go to very technical issues. And so we may have to take some of those under advisement and go follow up and get answers for you after this. We'll be happy to do that. And we've already got more questions in the queue than we can handle. But what we're going to try and do, just like we did with the last call about a month ago, we'll try and take those down after the call is over and review them and try and get back to you with written answers to the extent we can. So let me turn it over to
Steny.
Okay.
This is Steny. In light of the fact we started 15 minutes late, I suggest we go to 9:15 rather than 9.
8:45.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. We'll go over.
Okay.
All right. Luis, are you there?
Yes. Thank you so much, Congressman. And I want to reiterate what the Congressman said. Even if we do not get to your questions, we encourage you to ask them because after this call, his whole office will be dedicated to get you the correct answers to the questions that you had. So the first question will be to you, Congressman Ivey and Congressman Hoyer, which somebody asked, what are you people in Congress are doing to help us and fight for us?
Steny, you want to go first or should I?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're doing this. I want to hear from you and find out. But everybody in my office is focused on what this administration is doing every day. And they started on the first day, January 20th. And they dealt with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what that is to make sure that we have a workforce that looks like America. And not only did they do that, but then they told federal employees, look at your federal employee colleague And if they're doing something that relates to this, tell us. To set up a system of spying on one another. We follow this every day. We follow what the courts are doing, what the administration is doing, and what we're doing. Now, very frankly, the Republicans are in charge of the Congress. When I was majority leader, let me tell you what I would have done, because I would have had the authority to do so. I would have said, committees, we want Mr. Musk, we want the others who are implementing these orders down in front of Congress and telling us what they're doing. Secondly, we would have urged people, Congress may not have standing to sue, but we will urge people, take this issue to court. And that's what's been happening. And we have been urging that to happen. And very frankly, Rob Shriver and Democracy Forward and other organizations have been taking cases to the courts, and we've been winning almost every time. And that shows that this effort is illegal. We haven't stopped them yet, unfortunately and sadly, but we are doing everything we can. But they've got to be very cautious when they say they're going to do something, and particularly when they say they're going to fund something. Be very cautious, because it is the Congress, not the president, who funds salaries, expenses, and the running of government. So we're doing everything we possibly can, working at this every day, almost every hour. That's just about all I've done since January 21st, 22nd, when this whole thing started. Glenn?
Yeah, let me jump in for a quick supplement there, because it's a great question. It's the question of the hour for us on Capitol Hill. A lot of what this boils down to is 3 votes. We're down 3 votes in the House of Representatives. They have 217. We've got 215. We need to find 3 Republicans that we can flip by exerting political pressure on, and we're targeting Republicans that are in districts that Harris won. And the idea is to push forward with some of these issues, like the ones that are in court, but to force them to make tough decisions and then have their constituents in their districts push them to change and vote with us when the time comes. Remember, 80% of federal employees live outside of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. All of those Republicans have federal employees in their district, too. Secondly, we certainly are teaming up with the lawyers who are doing the work in court with, like, Democracy Forward. Yesterday, I was participating while they were filing the lawsuit in federal court on one side of 3rd Street. I was participating with about 12 of us from Congress, with the union and AFGE and others leading the fight. We had a big rally there in front of the Department of Labor because we knew Musk was supposed to be coming there to start digging into your personnel information. They saw the crowd and all of that and diverted it away. And at the same time, the litigation team got an injunction put in place, temporarily at least. So we're going to keep working on these things and pressing it forward. I think Trump is, he's gotten off to a fast start, so it looks fancy, but he's losing these things. And I think he's kind of flailing and failing in a way. He's making it sound good, but ultimately, we've been playing whack-a-mole. They're winning all of those in court. We just have to keep pushing this forward, and I think we can turn the tide if we do that.
Thank you for that, Congressman, and for Congressman Hoyer. This question is more for the chairwoman, Chairwoman Ivey. And somebody asked, what are local governments doing to help resist the new administration?
Well, we're not helping the new administration, if you mean Trump. We don't want to help him because we disagree with what he is doing. What we're trying to do, though, is help you. In our county, we have the American Job Center, which offers employment assistance for those who are looking for a job, because in the moment, you need to pay your mortgage, you need to pay your bills, and we understand that. And we want to help you do that in the meanwhile, while we're fighting. Now, it is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration, and the Trump administration froze that funding last week, although that was eventually reversed. But we know what their intentions are. Employ Prince George's is the quasi-governmental 501c3 nonprofit serving as the principal workforce development entity for the county. It's also funded by grants from the U.S. Labor Department and the state of Maryland. So we are in unprecedented and scary times, and we are not sure exactly what resources will be available going forward, but they are there right now. They're there right now, and if you're interested in trying to find another job for the moment, I would urge you to go to Employ Prince George's and the American Job Center to start help. Also, remember, if you've lost your job through no fault of your own, and this certainly is through no fault of your own, you are eligible for unemployment. And that is a state program, not a county function. And you apply based on where you were working. So if you were working in DC, you don't apply for unemployment in Maryland, you would apply in DC. But the maximums are, I think it's $50 a week is the minimum and $430 a week is the maximum. So it's not a lot of money, but it might help tide you over in the moment. So if you've lost your job, the sooner you can apply for unemployment, the better.
Thank you for that, Chairwoman. The next question is for Mr. Johnson, and thank you for being here, Mr. Johnson. Somebody asked, I am on administrative leave.
Let me,
Yeah.
because Jolene Ivey's exactly right, except for this. The way the the way the Trump administration and Musk have made the verbiage for you to leave, it is to resign. So it may be through no fault of your own, but what the administration is saying, you've got to resign. If you resign, you're not eligible for unemployment insurance.
Although there are
So
certainly, if you worked at USAID, for example, and you lost your job, you didn't resign, you were simply let go.
That's absolutely accurate. I just wanted to speak. So as I said, Jolene was correct, but be careful because what they've asked, $2 million, then they reduced it. Now that's on hold. The court just ruled today that the deadline is not the 6th, and they're going to have a hearing on it Monday. But the fact of the matter is, if you sign a resignation, and that's the verbiage they want you to sign. As a matter of fact, there's no verbiage. They want you to just send them a one-word email or text, resign. So be careful of that and understand that. Thank you.
I believe
Right,
I
thank you for
saw
your input,
Rob
Congressman.
Shriver. Did I see Rob Shriver?
Yeah. Well, let's do this. We've been joined
Okay.
by Ottis Jones. I want to give him a chance to speak and address the group. I apologize. I know there were difficulties in getting him on with us, but I did want to give Ottis a chance to speak first, and then we should probably ask him a little bit more about the buyout issue, because I know that's an issue that's a lot of people are sifting through right now. But Ottis, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Congressman, and thank everyone, the rest of the panelists. Had a little technical difficulty in getting on, but we're here. Plain and simple, family, brothers and sisters, we have been hijacked by this shadow government that's very hostile to all of us. I like to tell people everybody is saying that this is a buyout. A buyout falls up underneath the statute. And there's certain things that you can get when you're doing a buyout. This promises you nothing, and you can gain nothing from this. So I say to everyone that is considering it or thinking about it, to think hard and think long about this, because the CR, I don't know if the congressman spoke about the CR, but that ends on March the 14th. And the government has not made any progress to go past March the 14th on the CR. My International American Federation of Government Employees, Like the congressman spoke earlier, we have put in several injunctions and filed several lawsuits to stop this deferred resignation, is what it's called, and to try to ward off Elon Musk and his crew that's been going in and trying to take over all of our agencies. Um, I'm gonna ask our brothers and sisters that's on here to continue to stand fast and know that we are standing with you on 100%. And we know that this these agencies have been ran by our dedicated civil servants that have worked and dedicated their lives to these positions and to helping the American people to be able to achieve some of the things that they need to do. And for them to come in and start tearing up our agencies such as this, the way that they're going now is horrible and it does a disservice to each and every one of them. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. And I
Thank you for
apologize.
that.
I called you Jones instead of Johnson. I'm sorry about that, Otis. I apologize. Now, Luis, let me turn it back to you. I do want to ask, though, about the buyout question. I want to give Rob a chance to speak to that buyout issue. I think he touched on it a little bit during his earlier comments. Some of that faded out because of the connection. But, Rob, could you speak a little bit more on that as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And if I have any connection issues, I'll just turn the camera off. Okay. So I think everybody should proceed with caution. There are several issues related to this buyout that create major questions in my mind about whether it is a deal that will be lived up to in the end. First of all, as has been mentioned, we're under continuing resolution, and the Congress will have to take up a budget before March 14th. Who's to say that the Republican-controlled Congress won't defund this so-called deferred resignation? There's no guarantee against that. Secondly, there are regular procedures that the agencies can follow if they want their workforce. They can use VERA for early retirement or VSIP to create incentive payment for people to resign. Why aren't they using those programs, which are authorized by Congress and implemented through OPM regulations so that federal workers can depend on that deal? Thirdly, if you read the fine print that has been coming out in dribs and drabs, they are asking you to sign an incredibly broad waiver, a waiver of all rights that you have stemming from your employment with an agency. So if you have, for example, a pending overtime claim or a pending discrimination claim or anything like that, you would be waiving it. Moreover, it's unclear, although I think the intent is that you would waive any ability to enforce this agreement that they are asking you to sign. So they're asking you to sign an agreement that has language in it that tells you that you can't enforce it. And that is cold comfort when you think of who the author of this is. This is an Elon Musk tactic that he tried at Twitter and was sued in a class action lawsuit because he didn't live up to his deal. So that's why we went into court to get the temporary restraining order so that federal employees can get answers to these questions so that they don't get stuck holding the bag on a bad deal.
Luis, what's the next question?
The next question is for Mr. Johnson. Somebody asked, or several people are asking, worried about their personal information being shared with Elon Musk's team. So one consensus question is there any way we can get a class action suit against whoever released our personal information?
Well, let me take a little bit of a crack at that.
Okay.
And Rob, I guess you can chat a little bit about this too, because I believe you guys filed a lawsuit about that. The idea was, just so for people that aren't aware, Elon Musk and his literally six, like I guess they're teenagers, early 20s, were going into federal agencies and going into personnel files and other sensitive material, even though, as far as I know, they don't have any kind of security clearances, or I don't even know if they've had background checks or been vetted at all. And, based on the nominees that Trump put up, Matt Gaetz and those guys, that they weren't doing any kind of vetting process themselves. So, but the issue was they were going through personnel information, as Steny mentioned in his introductory comments, social security numbers, personnel information, medical information, all sorts of access to those kinds of things. And then on top of that, some of the departments, like they were trying to go into the Department of Labor, and OSHA is part of the Department of Labor. They've got open cases against Elon Musk's companies. So, the concern about conflict of interest there was pretty significant too. But, with respect to possible remedies, I don't know, Rob, would that be something you'd want to take a crack at?
Yeah, happy to, Congressman. So, yes, these are all very concerning claims that we're hearing about. That's why we went into court to stop them from even going into the Department of Labor for these reasons, so they couldn't access that information. There also has been, I know, a Privacy Act lawsuit that has been filed against the administration for improper accessing of this data. I can tell you that we are hard at work on all of these fronts. In fact, I can break some news, Congressman, that while we have been on this town hall tonight, Democracy Forward has filed a lawsuit against USAID to stop the illegal shutdown of that agency and stop them from firing people. So that happened just tonight. So this is the way that we need to be fighting right now, is fighting in the courts. And there are lots of organizations that are working hard to figure out the best ways to protect the privacy of your data through litigation avenues.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shriver. Mr. Johnson, somebody asked, can I join a union while on administrative leave?
Uh-oh, you're muted.
Ottis, you're muted.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Can you hear me now? All
Yes.
right. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I don't know if I can put my information here in the chat, but if you're on the administrative leave, you can join the union. Just, you can email me at otis.johnson@afge.org, and we will find what union you belong to, um, and which agency. I need to know which agency you're working at where you're on administrative leave, so we can point you in the right direction.
And Otis, this is Jolene. If you wouldn't mind, could you spell Otis for everyone?
That's OTTIS .Johnson JOHNSON @AFGE.org.
All right.
Thank
Two
you.
T's.
It's unusual.
Two
Yes.
T's,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you for pointing that out. And I'm certainly encouraging people to join unions as well, because I think now is the moment, now is the time. They need the strength that they can provide. They also have the expertise to provide individual answers to people based on the department or agency that they're in too. So,
Yep.
Luis, what's the next one?
One more thing,
Thank you.
Congressman. I'm sorry, I apologize. We have a program that we call eDues. If you go into the AFGE website, afge.org, you can follow the drop down on how to join AFGE, and it'll tell you also which agencies that we deal with and where you belong, and you can join by using our eDues system as well. That's so you don't have to go through the HR department at your agency. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Johnson. The next question is for any panelist who wants to answer it. They said, somebody asked, those of us who's not covered by the unions, who is representing us?
I'm happy to jump in, Congressman. So it's important to know that everybody who a federal employee has some level of rights, whether you're in a union or not. And most employees, those who are covered by Title V, have the right to file an appeal with the Merit System Protection Board if you're subject to what's called an L action. So, job based on something illegitimate.
You're,
You can file.
you're breaking up some, Rob.
Okay, let me go off camera here. Can you hear me okay now, Congressman?
Yes.
Can you hear me better? Okay. So I was just saying everybody has a right, everybody who's in a Title V agency, to file an appeal with the Merit System Protection Board. You can do that with counsel or without counsel. There are lots of federal employment law firms that want to help federal employees. There are resources on Civil Service Strong that walk you through how to file an appeal with the Merit System Protection Board. So certainly, if you're in a union, that should be your first stop. And I agree with what everybody has said. Join your union. They need your dues. The unions need to have the financial resource to fight for you. But even if you're not in a union, don't let that timeline go. If you get subject to something that you don't agree with, you think is wrong, file that appeal. And there are organizations that are looking to try to help you find legal counsel.
Rob, I want to
Before you
join
answer,
you
Mr. Shriver.
and Glenn and Jolene and say, obviously, to the extent that you are in an organized group, you have a bigger voice. And that's the strength of unions. But I also want to say, you asked, who represents you? These lawsuits that are being filed and so far being successful are representing you in a class of federal employees, of civil servants who are being adversely affected by the actions being proposed. So nobody ought to think these suits are on behalf of just one person or one group. They are essentially class action suits, and everybody in the class are those who are being adversely affected by these rules and requests and paper that is being sent to people almost every day with, frankly, a lot of misinformation. And I would stress again, many of us, but more importantly, many legal experts believe what is being done is illegal. So we expect and hope and pray that at some point, juncture in the near term, a court is going to rule that, and it won't be just a temporary stay. It'll be a ruling that says these actions are not consistent with the law and the protections that civil service members have.
Congressman Hoyer, this is Rob here. Thank you for clarifying that point. Just for example, the temporary restraining order against the fork in the road, that challenges the legal validity of the entire action. So everybody got that extension. We went presenting AFGE and some other unions, but the effect of that decision is everybody gets the extra time. The lawsuit on behalf of USAID employees tonight, everybody would be covered by whatever remedy the judge orders if they determine that this action is invalid. So thank you so much, Congressman, for making that point.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you both for that valuable information. The next question is for the two congressmen. Somebody asked, what further protections can Congress put in place to prevent federal employees from becoming at-will employees? And specifically, what is Congress doing to help get DEI staff on administrative leave back to work?
You know, can we let Rob take that one? Because Rob's got to go at 8:30,
yeah, sure.
but I know that Democracy Forward has already filed a couple of lawsuits on that front. Can we let him go first, Steny?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, we have filed a lawsuit against the DEI policies. We filed them on behalf of organizations that depend on that DEI work and have had funding stripped and other adverse consequences, because that was the best way to get into court on that one. But once again, this is a challenge to the validity of the underlying action. And if we win in that case, then all of the employment actions that are taken, we would ask that those stop. But I also want to point out that I think there are major problems with the way that they are looking to carry out reductions in force for people allegedly working on DEI. They've been overbroad. They have covered people that used to work on DEI but don't anymore. They have covered people who only took a DEI training. They have covered presidential management fellows who did a rotation in a DEI office and moved on to something else. They have covered employees who, as part of their collateral duties, worked on an internal agency council on DEI. So I think they've been incredibly overbroad. And in addition to the lawsuits that I mentioned that Democracy Forward has brought, if you get a reduction in force notice and they're telling you that you are going to be laid off, you have a right to appeal that before the Merit System Protection Board. And I think there are major problems with the way they are implementing this, and that those appeals, at least some of them, can be successful.
All right, and can you touch on the Schedule F aspect of the question too?
I sure can. So the administration has rolled out a version of Schedule F that is even broader and more aggressive than it was under its initial iteration during the first Trump administration. In addition to it being overly broad, it also purports to suspend application of OPM regulations that are on the books. Those regulations are in effect and can't ignore them. And so their effort to ignore the regulations and strip federal employees of their due process rights, turning them into essentially political appointees who are subject to having action taken against them for being insufficiently loyal to the administration. The OPM regulations on the books prevent that. And so we're suing to enforce those regulations and make sure that everybody continues to have the due process protections that they deserve. And if they try to change the regulations, we think that they'll have a hard time doing that too, because the OPM regulations that are on the books are the ones that are the strongest and best reading of the laws. They are the implementation of the laws on the books. And so changing that policy, in our opinion, would be contrary to the laws on the books.
I agree with that. This is Congressman Hoyer. But further, what the Congress ought to do is pass legislation consistent with the existing Service Act to protect employees from being made political appointees, from being career employees against their will.
I think that makes sense. I'll add this too. I mean, I think part of the litigation that Rob laid out there is moving forward. One I wanted to mention as well, though, is that there are Anthony Brown is the Attorney General of Maryland. There are other colleagues of his, and I think it's 22 other states that have also filed some lawsuits and are looking to file more. The reason they're a little delayed behind Democracy Forward and others is they have to wait to get standing. And the way that they do that is when unemployment benefits or some burden is imposed on the state. The state has to be able to show it's been injured in some way, but they're already preparing to file lawsuits against Schedule PC, it's called now, and the DEI initiatives as well. Rob, can you stick with us a little longer, or you got to go now?
I have about 2 minutes, and I've jumped to something else that I've got tonight.
Why don't we give you a chance to make a final sort of statement with your 2 minutes? I know you covered some of the things at the beginning, but are any final words for us before you go?
Yeah, we just have our eyes across the board on all of this stuff. We know that those of you who are probationary employees are probably anxious about what you've heard. In that regard, we know that there are other agencies where the Doge folks are coming to visit and to try to get access to data. We're watching that. We know that there are other agencies that they may try to dismantle illegally. We're watching that. We just know, like, there is a large network of people and organizations who care deeply about you and about the work that you do. And so it is my honor to come to events like this. And thank you so much again, Congressman Ivey, for inviting me, because at OPM, I got to be a champion of federal employees. I got to see what federal employees do day in and day out for the American people. And so to have a chance to come and talk to you and let you know that you're members of Congress, that organizations like Democracy Forward, that your unions, we are all fighting for you. We are winning. We are winning in every court that we go into. We are winning in front of judges appointed by President Reagan, by President Clinton, by President Bush, across the board. Each case that we are bringing, we are winning. So we're going to keep fighting for you. Check out civilservicestrong.org for resources. We update it regularly, provide new information to help you navigate what's going out. Thank you once again for your service. Thank you.
All right, I think
Thank you, Mr.
we
Shriver.
lost him there, but thank you, Rob, so much for your participation and your insight tonight. We thank you for all that you're doing with Democracy Forward and the civil service group as well. Luis, you got the next question for us? I think we've got about 10 minutes left.
Yes, I do. The next question is for the chairwoman. Somebody asked, worst case scenario, I lost my job, I lost my health insurance, I live in Prince George's County, Maryland. What can I do?
Well, the first thing, of course, would be to apply for unemployment wherever you can apply. That is the first step. And we also are working very closely with the Department of Social Services and Family Services in Prince George's County to make sure we're able to help people get connected to the services that they need. In addition, as a council, we're pulling together a group of people who will have representatives from the county, state, and federal levels so we can keep an eye on what's going on. We'll have someone from AFGE on as well, and make sure that we're staying on top of these things so we can jump in and help everywhere we can, because we need to fight this together. This isn't something that you should be fighting alone, and I hope that you will reach out directly so that we can help support you. We don't want anyone to lose their job, to lose access to health care, and as a county, as a state, as your federal representatives, we're gonna be right there for you.
All right, thank you for that, Chairwoman.
If I could add just briefly as well, if you've been terminated, you want to make sure that if you want to challenge that, you need to make sure you go forward with the challenge in a timely way. I don't know what the timelines are. I've never practiced this type of law. Might be 7 days, might be 30 days. Touch base with your union to make sure you get some guidance on that. But if you don't challenge the termination, you might end up being viewed as having waived the right to challenge it down the road and perhaps seek reinstatement and back pay. So make sure that you talk to attorneys, hopefully with the union or Democracy Forward, and the HR department. If they're still functioning, I've heard that they haven't been great on returning calls and things, but make sure you get those questions answered so that if you have to take steps to preserve your rights, that you do that.
Excellent point.
Yes, thank you for that, Congressman. Another question is for any panelist who wants to answer it. Somebody asked, what about the people who took the buyout, signed the paper, but then later changed their mind? What can they do?
Well, that's going to have to be resolved by the courts. And my premise is this is an illegal process. If, in fact, it's an illegal process, what they have done should be nullified. In other words, should not have any adverse effect on this signee because this demand and this deadline that was set arbitrarily, capriciously, and in my opinion, illegally, should not have any adverse effect on the employees who received that, who were worried about what might happen, and went down a road that was illegal to begin with, so that we don't right now know how you can back out. But if my premise is correct, and the initial demand of you was an illegal undermining of your rights under the civil service law that now exists, then I think you'll be okay. But I can't give you a definitive answer for that because all of this is uncharted.
I think that's right. But keep a couple things in mind. One is there's going to be a hearing on Monday, as Steny mentioned earlier, that talks about what the status of this is going to be. But if you send in the resignation and you've changed your mind, I don't think, at least the versions of this I've seen, I don't think they rule out your ability to withdraw your resignation, to withdraw your agreement to that deal, especially since, as Steny states, I don't know that it's a valid agreement anyway, a valid contract anyway. So I would suggest, and again, talk to lawyers there at your department or at your union, but try and find a way to make it clear in writing, you know what? I don't think I want to resign after all. I've heard the things I've heard in the wake of this now. I'm changing my mind. I want to continue to keep working, and I'm rescinding my resignation. You might want to take a hard look at doing that again. That makes it easier to preserve your rights if you end up challenging it down the road. But you got to make sure that you take the right steps to do that. So make sure you get counsel to help you out with that, so that you take the right steps to protect your rights and preserve your options moving forward.
Got it. Thank you so much, Congressman. Now, this is towards the end, so I will ask each panelist in 30 seconds to provide your closing remarks. Congressman Ivey, you will be last, and you will close us out for the night. But let's start with Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
on.
Congressman. All right, thank you. Thank you for putting this on for us tonight. I just my one hope and one wish is that I know it's probably hard, but for President Trump and Mr. Elon Musk to have actually sat down with some of us to really get to know the civil servants that work in these agencies before they went and start trying to disrupt our members' lives. Everyone that has sent me an email, I will be trying to get in touch with each and every one of you. If not by tomorrow, by sometime next week, because they are coming in with questions, and I truly appreciate each and every one of you. But just be steadfast and unmovable, and knowing that the unions, we are out here working for you guys along with the Congress, and hoping that and praying that everything will go through for each and every one of us. Thank you, Congressman, again.
Thank you.
Chairwoman Ivey.
In Silicon Valley, the mantra is move fast and break things. That will not and should not work when it comes to the civil service. The president has outsourced authority to unqualified tech bros to break the civil service, contrary to the rule of law. There are long-established protections that are being ignored or attempted to be overridden. Threats, diminishment, and intimidation of the federal civil service are what Elon Musk has set out to do. But we cannot let him. We are all in this together, and a united front will eventually be able to overcome this disaster of an administration.
Congressman Hoyer.
I think this again is Steny Hoyer. I don't think I could have said it better than Jolene Ivey has said it. The fact is, we're in this together. We all want a civil service that is above politics, that is not looking out for its own interests, but looking out for the interests of the American people. And we want a civil service that has employees who are confident if they do a good job, if they perform the services that we require of them, that then they will have a confidence that they will not be arbitrarily, capriciously, and in a day or two or three cashiered out of their jobs. I've heard from family members who are so worried about their children and their mortgage payment and how they're going to pay for the car bill. And this is not the way the law says it should be done. I think it's illegal. I think it's going to be set aside. And I think our civil service is going to be intact. And I pray that is the case. And if we work together and stand together, I think that will be the result. Thank you, Glenn, for scheduling this meeting with our constituents. And I look forward to working with you to answer questions that we did not answer live, but that we will get answers to in the days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steny, Jolene, Ottis. I appreciate everything that you've brought to this tonight. To those of you who were on, I'm told by my staff we've got hundreds of questions from you. So here's what we're going to try and do. We're going to work our way through them and try and provide answers. I don't know if we'll be able to provide individual answers for each individual email, but we can try and do a newsletter that lays out some of the answers for these things. So if you hit *6 and give us the information, I think that allows us to put together a newsletter and send it out to a group of you all, so we can answer as many questions. A lot of these questions that you have are overlapping. We want to provide those answers to you. Secondly, to the extent you need assistance, especially legal help, based on some of the questions that came up tonight, I really do want to suggest very strongly, before you take a big step or make a big decision, try and get some legal support or insight or advice about the options that you have. These are pretty big steps, as you know. Certainly, they can impact your pension, your retirement, your benefits, all of those things. So make sure you get the advice and the information first before you make those decisions. We're trying to help connect people up with that. I believe Rob, suggested that Democracy Forward would help with that. Ottis mentioned that AFGE can help with that too. And your departments and agencies might be able to have their HR departments give information and guidance to you as well. But try and take advantage of all those opportunities. And then finally, I do want to join with Steny and Jolene in saying, try and stay strong. I realize these are very difficult times. Many of you are, losing your jobs, your careers are at risk, impacting your families, sometimes at very difficult and vulnerable times. We understand that that's the challenge, and we do want to keep working to help get you through this, to help push back the Trump attacks on the federal workforce. And I believe we'll be successful over time, but it's going to take a while. So we'll keep working hard. We'll work with you to get this done. And we look forward to doing as much as we can to provide assistance and answer your questions. So with that, I thank you all so much. Luis, thank you for hosting this and being the MC. And we'll follow up with you shortly. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.